Now, following accusations of corruption against Deputy President Paul Mashatile, Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen is determined that he should face the consequences. It follows a number of investigative journalists publishing shocking exposés that detail Mashatile's alleged involvement in the nearly 2-decade-long web of corruption and state capture. Joining me to unpack this development is political analyst Professor Ntsikelelo from the Center for Security, Peace and Conflict Resolution at Nelson Mandela University. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. The DA is determined to get President Ramaphosa to act against Mashatile by firing him from his executive post and subjecting him to a thorough investigation by the SIU. What should we make of this?
Well, first of all, Paul, I think the president has a history of making commitments and not honoring them. And it's good that the DA is reminding him about the commitment that he made, that he was going to initiate a live audit on members of the executive institution. So I don't think that they are off the mark in that regard. I think they are on point. To the Deputy President, I've got mixed feelings about the issue in question. I'll tell you why, because part of me thinks that, in a democracy, in theory, opposition parties, they are within their right to report about allegations of corruption, to hold the government of the day accountable, and the DA is doing precisely that. On the other hand, part of me thinks that in the domain of politics, politicians don't act in good faith because politics is about advancing your own interests. I've been observing an interesting phenomenon as an outsider, about the issue of the deputy president, that in my view, there seems to be a concerted effort to basically unleash operations of attacks on his character, since he has ascended to the position of deputy presidency, which is quite interesting. Of course, I'm not saying that, people cannot report about allegations of corruption about him simply because he's the deputy president now. It's just that, these allegations have been laid bare, almost every 2 weeks, every now and then, which begs the question as to what is the rationale behind these reports.
Yeah.
Can we rule out, for instance, the possibility that there is an underhand surrounding these allegations? Can we rule out the possibility that there is more to this than meets the eye?
As you speak about possibilities, and given the assertion you're making, some analysts have since poured cold water over the DA's threats, calling this move a bid to snatch power outside of the democratic process.
In what way? They are an official opposition. Of course, it might happen that they're acting as a proxy, but then I don't think that we can say they are at fault to lay bare, allegations of corruption. That is one of the roles of the opposition party, to report about corruption, to hold the executive accountable, and I think that they are doing that. But also I think in the bigger scheme of things, when we are teasing out these complexities, we cannot also rule out the possibility that there might be more to this than meets the eye. Maybe there is a war that has broken out within the ANC. There's a war that is brewing, and the DA is just being used as a proxy in pursuit of that objective, a realization to hold back the deputy president from becoming the president of the ANC or from taking over. I don't think that we should rule out that possibility. But we're talking about politics here.
The DA is essentially arguing that had President Ramaphosa carried out the lifestyle audits of his executive as promised in his first State of the Nation address at the beginning of his term, all of these alleged corrupt dealings would have come to light across his cabinet. How much pressure do you think that these remarks and this dossier now places Ramaphosa ahead of this week's coming SONA? Because the DA says that Ramaphosa must announce Mashatile's removal from government during his SONA. What are the possibilities?
I'm not sure if the president is going to do that and succumb to that pressure, because now they're giving him a deadline. Of course, I'm not a mind reader, but I agree with them in their line of thinking that the president should have honored his commitment, because there were a number of commitments that the president made before he ascended to power, that he was going to take a stand against corruption, and also that is part of the renewal of the ANC to fight against corruption. So it could have been good if the president had honored that particular commitment by rolling out the lifestyle audit on his members of the executive.
ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula, during a press briefing this week, spoke about the step-aside policy, saying that it's being refined, and, even alluded to some of the open questions. What would happen should a person not be in a position of power, but, they are accused of corrupt allegations? How then does the step-aside rule be enforced? How much of a compromise would it be for Ramaphosa to enact it in this matter regarding his deputy president?
The ANC at the moment, is faced with a number of challenges. One of the problems that the ANC at the moment is faced with is the Zuma issue, which is a thorny issue. I don't think that it would want to compound its problems by letting go of the deputy president, because that will just escalate the magnitude of the conflict within the ANC in terms of factionalism. I think the ANC has a desire to approach the upcoming elections as a unified force. Therefore, it will try to manage this issue politically. I think whether it is right or wrong, but in my view, it will turn a blind eye to these political developments surrounding the deputy president, and maybe examine the matter when elections are over. But I don't think that it would want to risk a situation whereby there will be a major threat that poses a stability to the party, because the possibility that if you let go of the deputy president, people might group themselves again into a faction and maybe align themselves with that faction of Msholozi, and that will escalate the tensions within the ruling party. So I don't expect the president to let go of the deputy president or the step aside to kick in.
So as we're in this political atmosphere, elections date for the least to be announced any moment, really. What are some of the expectations when it comes to the various political parties and having a foot ahead of the other with the number of explosive content and information we're likely to see as we near the elections?
Today, I think it's a registration day. I think the worst part of it is the fact that as things stand, young people have not registered on a large scale, and I would like to encourage them to register in huge numbers, because young people are future leaders. I mean, if young people don't participate in politics, it begs the question about the future leaders of the country. And also democracy, requires maximum participation. But also I understand why a lot of young people have been opting out of politics, because if you look at unemployment, inequality, poverty, those social ills in the main, they affect young people. But of course, political parties will be up and about in terms of traveling the length and the breadth of the country, unveiling their manifestos, trying to pitch their messages to a wider audience in terms of trying to garner votes and so on. So I think these upcoming elections are going to be very interesting, because we might see a surprise for the first time in our democracy, because it's not quite clear which way the wind is blowing in terms of who is going to emerge as a victor. There might be no outright winner, and that might create a scope for a coalition formation to come into the picture.
What was interesting, Professor Breakfast, as we listened to the IEC briefing this week, was the 30 to 39 cohort being substantially high when it comes to registered voters, and the 20 to 29 cohort right at the bottom there at the minimal in comparison to that 30 to 39 cohort. What will be interesting to note as we head into elections, and also just getting a sense of the mindset of those in the 30 to 39 cohort? Where do their loyalties lie? Because a lot of what we've seen in the past is, one's great-grandmother and grandmother may have voted for the ANC. So this time around, one would... I think it would be dangerous to assume that that's the same pattern that will likely follow as we take a look at some of the concerns and challenges that have been raised by people in the country.
Frans Fanon once said every generation has its own agenda. So the generation of young people between the ages of arguably, let's say, 18 and 5, I think those ones, some of them think that the struggle is over, in particular the ones who are part of the middle class. Some of them, they find expression in entertainment. But the issue of political apathy is not confined to the South African phenomenon. It's a global phenomenon which was caused, in my view, by the fall of the Soviet Union, which created a scope for market fundamentalism or neoliberalism coupled with individualism, consumerism. Because what is the meaning of political apathy? It simply means that you are individualistic, you are not part of the collective, because politics demands that you function within the collective and you become concerned about societal issues. But also the young people that you spoke about, I think in the first category, yes. Between the ages of 36 and 39, those ones I think have been around since the ushering in of our democracy, because I think in the early stages of our democracy, turnout was very high in 1994 and also arguably in the second cycle of our elections in 1999. But it's only in the early 2000s that we saw a decline of turnout. Yeah. No wonder that has affected young people who are 18 and 25.
Very well. Thank you so much for weighing in on this discussion, Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast, political analyst and director of the Center for Security, Peace and Conflict Resolution at the Nelson Mandela University.